Okay, so we are further exploring what it means to think critically and to identify certain components of writing that bring some strength and weaknesses to arguments. So now that we have looked at some of the rhetorical strategies to sort of structure writing in order to persuade an audience, we're going to look at some of the ways that this can be problematic. So we're going to look at fallacies. So fallacy comes from the Latin, and basically what this means is it's some kind of misdirected or misleading argument. Now, this can be intentional, in an attempt to sort of manipulate an audience with some fancy wordplay, or it can be unintentional. The problem or the issue with fallacies is that they're really subtle. And so sometimes we don't even realize that we are making them, particularly if we don't know that they exist. But overall, it weakens the argument because it is not a logical argument. There are holes. And so I'm going to point out some of the ways that fallacies are created. So here are some classic examples of fallacies, and at first glance, they might seem to be perfectly reasonable arguments, but as we sort of start to unpack them a little bit, we can see that they are not strong logical arguments. So for example, the phrase, "Oh, everybody loves bacon." Well, while that might be something that is easy to kind of assume or accept, obviously there are vegetarians and vegans who don't love bacon. There are people who don't eat pork because of religious reasons. There are people who just don't like the taste of bacon or the smell of bacon. So really all it takes is for me to find one person who doesn't love bacon, and now everyone is invalid. Other things like, students are nervous to speak up in class. This generation is suffering from poor self-esteem. Well, doesn't necessarily mean that just because a selected group of students are nervous to speak up in class, that means all students. And at the same time, there isn't necessarily a one-to-one correlation between being nervous to speak up in class and having poor self-esteem. So while, these are kind of easy claims to make, they're not easy claims to substantiate. So there are 7 that I want to explain in further detail, but keep in mind that it's not important that you remember the names of these fallacies, nor was it important that you remember the names of the rhetorical techniques. I'm more interested that you are aware that they exist and that they are used in writing. And in the case of fallacies, that they are mistakenly used. They should not be used in your writing. So we're going to look at each of these individually, and then I have a bit of an activity for you to do to practice. In addition to this video, you will notice that there's a number of videos that I've posted from YouTube. There was this great little series on TEDx that really fun little animations that I think do a great job of explaining certain fallacies as well. So I really encourage you to have a look at those. Okay, so to begin with, there is the syllogism fallacy. Now, a syllogism is the, 2 ideas that have something in common, therefore prove something else. The, most common, or not common, but, a popular example is the "all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal." Now, this is an effective and a correct syllogism. However, there can be a fallacy in syllogism if it is irrational, if it is unreasonable. So for example, all sharks are fish, all salmon are fish, therefore all salmon are sharks. Well, no, right? All sharks are fish, all hammerheads are sharks, therefore all hammerheads are fish. Okay, But, you can see how there's, if you make this construction, but you're not adding in some rationality to it, the fallacy is going to exist. Also take a moment to sort of point out semantically how this is working. So here we have all men. Let's look at let's look at this one. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. We're sort of replacing men in the, do I have here's my little pointer. Laser pointer here. We have Socrates is just replacing men in this sentence, and therefore Socrates is mortal. We can't do that in this construction, right? All sharks are fish, all salmon are fish. Therefore, are we going to replace salmon with fish? Right? No, if we're playing with the same construction here, we would be replacing salmon with sharks, right? So I don't know if that helps or confuses you, but I just would like you to sort of look at what is really happening in these sentences, right? In this section, right, this makes sense. In this section, this does not make sense. Okay, moving on. Rid of my laser pointer there. Okay, moving on. All right, next one is sweeping generalization. Now I mentioned this with the bacon example. So if you make some kind of claim, you better be able to back it up, right? Don't make claims that you can't substantiate. So here we have, the example, all I need to do is find one, right? One person who disagrees, right? One politician who is not corrupt, one blonde who is very intelligent, one feminist who does not hate men, right? And this, it's incorrect. Your statement is incorrect. And since the dawn of time, or we get this a lot in first year essays, and I really want to emphasize, do not do this in your essay. Do not claim since the beginning of history, people have thought, or since the dawn of time, this is the truth. It is impossible to know that, because we would have to know every person who ever thought anything, or, since the dawn of time. Well, we're going back billions of years, right? So do not make these kinds of claims. They cannot be substantiated. Overgeneralization or hasty generalization. So this is what happens when you take a small sampling and you use it to represent something larger, right? So just because your grandma smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day and drank a bunch of whiskey and lived into her 80s doesn't mean that everybody will be fine if they smoke 2 packs of cigarettes and drink a bunch of whiskey, right? And the examples I have here of the not all men or the all lives matter, right? This is kind of this is a very subtle sort of overgeneralization, right? So we had the Me Too movement, which then sparked the not all men. Well, nobody is saying all men, right? So don't be hasty and generalize that what the Me Too movement is saying is all men, right? Same thing with all lives matter. So this was the response to the Black Lives Matter, right? And it was a common sort of rebuttal or argument. Well, nobody is saying that only Black Lives Matter, right? So this is kind of a hasty rebuttal, a hasty generalization to try and push back against the initial argument, right? But it's overgeneralizing. So post hoc, the Latin for this is after this, therefore because of this. So what this is a fallacy of is you saying, well, this one thing, resulted in this other thing. And no, not necessarily, right? So if you get sick after going to McDonald's, you immediately can conclude that you got food poisoning. Well, not necessarily, right? You can't really prove that, right? The last time my team won, I was wearing this shirt, so I have to wear the shirt every time my team plays or my team isn't going to win. Well, there's a very good chance that your shirt choice did not directly result in your team winning, right? A common one that is used as an example is the rooster crows at sunrise, therefore the crowing makes the sunrise. Well, no, we can't say that because the crow, or because the rooster crows, therefore the sun rises. They happen around the same time, great, but one cannot prove that the other, one is not the result of the other. Connected to that is the single cause, single outcome. Also, causation does not equal correlation. Okay, you cannot attribute one thing to an outcome. And so, the common example that is going around, there is a whole lot of stuff that, commonly I do it myself, right? That we are all saying that COVID is causing a lot of stuff, right? And while COVID certainly is impacting a lot of things, from prices and supply issues and mental health and education and employment and all of that kind of stuff, we have to remember that this is one huge, yes, huge circumstance within a very complex system of other circumstances, right? So we cannot forget about things like environmental impacts that might be influencing gas prices as well, or economic issues that were happening far before COVID that might be affecting unemployment as well as COVID. The labor shortage because of COVID. A lot of people are saying, well, thanks to CERB, nobody wants to go back to work. And, while there is certainly some conversation about how some people are saying, well, yeah, why should I go back to my job that was shitty when right now I don't need to, I can get, money elsewhere, right? Let's not get rid of those reasonings of certain industries that have shitty quality of employment life, right? That is also a cause. So we cannot connect one single thing to a complex issue and call it a strong argument. Begging the question, going around in circles, right? You could quit smoking if you really wanted to. Right? Oh, okay, so I can quit smoking because I can quit smoking, right? Oh, Avatar was the greatest film ever made because it made the most money. Well, but what was it about it that made people want to see it, that therefore made it make a lot of money? Fruits and veggies are good for you because people who tell you what foods are good for you say that fruits and veggies are good for you. Well, no, it has to do with vitamins and minerals and fiber and stuff, right? So you can't make a claim and support it by saying the claim is true, right? That's just going around in circles. And then there is the straw person fallacy. So this one you probably heard of in the past, the straw man fallacy. And this is where you get a lot of those sort of ideas of, oh, so you think blah, 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 right? Really kind of jumping to these conclusions or teasing out this minute thing or manipulating or misinterpreting something and arguing against that, right? So my daughter is sad. She's going to suffer from depression for the rest of her life. She's never going to get a job. She's going to be hooked on antidepressants forever and all hope is lost. Well, no, right now your daughter is sad. And maybe something's going on in her life, but does not mean all of those other things. One of the common ones that's happening right now, people are equating showing vaccine passports to the Holocaust. Well, I mean, really though? Right? So, I really am not a fan of Rihanna. Oh, so you don't like powerful women then, right? No, maybe I don't like her voice, right? I'm neither a fan nor not a fan of Rihanna, but you get my point, right? So sort of honing in on one element of somebody's argument that isn't really there and arguing against that, right? You are essentially, there's like a scarecrow and you're attacking that instead of the main issue, right? That's what a straw person fallacy is. Okay, so what I would like you to do to practice these is I'd like for you to choose an example of a fallacy. So this can be from the slides that I've given you here. It can be if you recognize one in one of the essays that you're reading right now, or if you're interested and want to get creative, you can write your own. Then I want you to identify which fallacy is occurring and why. So explain what example of a fallacy is this, and you know, identify the details within it that show that it is that fallacy. Then I want you to say what is it that needs to be changed or added in order to turn it from a fallacy into a rational argument. And please post these on the discussion board. So as usual, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and thank you very much.